Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Rules of Engagement. It's been a little while since our last episode with all the, WCS America Finals and whatnot. But we're on to another episode today, and of course, I'll have another one tomorrow and the next day, etc. after each day of WCS content. Today, we're going to take a look at a couple of games from the WCS America Challenger Bracket Round 3. First, we're going to take a look at a game between Scarlett and Jim. Talk about how you can be patient in Zerg versus Protoss. We're going to take a look at another Scarlett vs. Jim game. Talk about how to defend a 2-base timing in Zerg vs. Protoss. We'll take a look at a TVT between Pult and Tasia, where one of the players goes mech and the other one goes bio. And then the end of those three segments is going to be the Q&A. So submit any questions you have to me on Twitter, at @axslav, or in a comment on YouTube video at youtube.com/official MLGSC2. Just find any of the Rules of Engagement videos. Leave your comment there. So our first section is going to be Scarlett vs. Jim and Patient Zerg vs. Protoss. Talk about how to tech fast in Zerg vs. Protoss and a couple things to keep in mind when you're doing so. Also, how to play patiently and how to correctly pick your battles. So, jump this game here at the 6-minute mark. And basically, what's happening here so far is we see a very fast tech build coming out of Scarlett, right? 2 bases, no third yet, already mining a lot of gas, getting double evolution chambers. One thing that's pretty cool to notice is that what Scarlett is going to do is because she's actually noticed that her opponent went fast 4 gases. So she can go ahead and actually delay Zerging speed to get the 1-1 upgrades a little bit faster. It's a very minor detail at home. I'd recommend you get the Zerging speed faster and have that already halfway done at this point instead of waiting and spending your first gas on those 1-1 upgrades. And that's just because it's a little bit more of a robust build. But this is a small refinement because if you don't need that Zerging speed, you might as well get the upgrades first. But that's something you have to have really spot on scouting for. I just always recommend home generally getting that speed before the upgrades. One thing that's important, if you're ever doing a build like this, your third base is kind of late, your layer is first. If you look at the worker count, you're going to be roughly on par with the Protoss in economy, not a significant difference there. It's very important to recognize, okay, if I'm teching fast and I'm not taking the third base fast, I'm not really quickly getting a lot of drones that are cranking to that third base, getting economic advantage, and I'm not doing it all in, I'm going to need to use cost-efficient units, or at the very least cost-even units with the Protoss. What that means is you should definitely avoid roaches, avoid hydralisks, and avoid corruptors if you're ever going to do this tech-focused type of play. And the reason why is because there isn't really a single Protoss unit that roaches, hydralisks, or corruptors are actually cost-efficient against. They can only work if you can outnumber your opponent massively. So if you're not going to have that ability to outnumber them massively, because as we said, the economy is fairly similar. I mean, of course, you're still going to have a little bit more economy just because you're Zerg and you can produce drones faster than they can produce probes. But it's not going to be that much more. You really want to avoid the roaches, hydralisks, and corruptors because they're never going to be cost efficient. At best, they're going to be like only slightly cost inefficient. And so they can work if you have a lot of economy. If you don't, stick with units like speedlings, infestors, swarm hosts, potentially mutalisks if you can think you can harass really well if they don't have a good response to them, ultralisk breed lords, etc. So now we'll see both players just going to kind of macro up. The Protoss opponent, when they realize that the Zerg player's basically teching fast, they say, you know what, I want to get this third base. Use speed, zealots and sentries to defend that third base because there's no roaches, so speedings alone can't really get past this quantity of zealots and sentries. Phoenix Harass is going to keep tabs on exactly what Scar is doing. I'm just going to exit this here the next few minutes because both players really just kind of stay back. One thing that's very important is notice how aggressively Scar is spraying to creep throughout the map. And that's because what she's going to do is she's going to use a lot of queens in her composition. If you look, she already has 7. She's going to continue to produce a few more. There's another one, an 8th on the way as well. And the reason that she wants a lot of queens is because she's going for that ultralisk infestor queen combination. Queens are for transfuse. They can beat off these phoenixes and defend against the air as well as help the ultralisk on the ground. Now, the one thing you want to also keep in mind is if you're going to be going for this late game composition, notice that what Scarlett's doing is she's only producing the energy units right now. She's identified that her opponent took a third base. She identified that quite a while ago. So she's only making energy-based units knowing, okay, for the next few minutes there's no threat. If I want to make an army that's going to be good at the 15-minute mark, early on I should just make the infestors into queens. And those will accumulate energy. And then right before I want to attack, that's when I'll start making the ultralisk and the speedlings, units that are as effective no matter how long they've been on the field. Whereas the energy-based units, if you produce them earlier, then of course they have a lot more energy for that later attack. So So now as she goes ahead, we'll just watch once those Ultralisks come out. That's when the Zerg will typically look to do a timing. As soon as you have a few Ultralisks on the field, they have a bunch of Speedlings, they have Queens, they have Infestors, and a few Ultralisks are about to join the party. There's the first one, a couple more rallying in. This, right here, this moment exactly, is when a Zerg is thinking about doing a timing. They say, you know what, maybe I can kill the Protoss. Because right now, if you look at it, he's only going to have 3 Immortals, he only has a few Colossi, and against this low damage output, the transfuses are much easier to put down on the units. The Fungals are going to be great as well. There's not enough Colossi to really kill the Infestors too easily. And the Ultralisks don't really have a strong counter because there's not that many Immortals. But it's still a situation where, do you want to charge up a ramp off creep? Probably not. So Scarlett wants to look for the engagement. She's saying, okay, if I can get up the ramp and then engage him, that's fine. So maybe if I can distract him with the Speedlings, then I can get this engagement going for the timing. Scudding up there again with the units, seeing, okay, he's in position on the ramp. I can't really break that. You know, Speedlings are going to do some harass here. Zealots will be warped in to defend. The main idea, though, is look how patient she's being. Yes, typically Zergs like to do a timing right now, but you know what? If there's no obvious timing, just back away. In fact, probably even trying to go up there, it cost her a couple extra queens she didn't need to lose. Just pick your battles perfectly. And so when it comes down to picking your battles, what you want to do, you want to make sure that you're always fighting on creep, and you want to make sure that all of your Ultralisks engage at once. And those two things will allow you to maximize your damage output, and it'll allow you to tree pass. So look at this. Notice how when she's engaging, notice the important part about the units. We're just going to bring up the touchscreen here real quick. The important thing to do is keep track of where all the Ultralisks. There wasn't a whole bunch of Ultralisks all in the line. There wasn't like Ultralisks all in this zone right here. No. Where the Ultralisks were was they're in this line. They're in a line that as it comes down, it's got great angles attacking the entire Protoss force. Every single Ultralisk is just charging in there. There's not a single Ultralisk except for maybe this guy right here who has a trouble getting to the front line because there's somebody else in front of him. So it's all about picking the battles well. If we get back in the game, we can see that as the engagement happens, yes, there's a good Protoss army. Yes, there's 6 Immortals and there's only 5 Ultras. But because every single Ultras can connect, because there's creep allowing the Queen Cell getting out of action, hit their transfuses, because the Fungal Ghosts prevent the Protoss from kiting, and the creep allows the Ultras to charge forward fast, it's actually going to be a decent engagement for Scarlett. Did she totally crush the whole Protoss army? No. In fact, these Infested Terrans are probably a little bit of a waste as Protoss had to back away anyway. And Infested Terrans don't really do anything, so I'd avoid using them in general. But the important thing is she kept the Infestors alive, and ideally, hopefully, she can keep the Queens alive too. If not, that's okay. You can replace them very quickly. The Ultralisks, 5 Ultralisks, you can replace those pretty quickly. Right there, 5 Ultras being made. The harder thing to replace is, of course, if you have to replace Ultras and Infestors, you typically don't have that same gas income. But again, it's all about picking your battles. So right now, she said, okay, I made a good trade versus the Protoss. He's only on 3 bases. I can replace him with forces faster than him. Now the Protoss is saying, that battle wasn't that great because it was on creep. I need to kill the creep. I need to take a 4th base so I can replace Archons, replace more Colossi and Immortals, all these powerful tech units. So Scarlett again is thinking, okay, I need to kill this 4th base. And she's looking for that same engagement. But notice how she's looking to engage here in this open area. When she realized the Protoss was back in this zone, where she couldn't get a good massive concave and open area, like right here, ideally she would have fought. She's going to circle around really quickly, use the Zerg speed advantage, right? Again, she's going to see if she can get down here. Protoss is guarding this choke point right here, so she can't charge through the choke point and get a nice unit spread. So as soon as the Protoss commits to defending this choke point, all of a sudden Scarlett can really quickly fake a little bit and then come across the top and kill this Nexus. What's important here to note is how ideal of a spot is this fight. It's actually a pretty poor spot. If you think about it, there's a couple key things to realize about this engagement position. One, these Ultralisks over here that are engaging in this zone, there's no way a Queen can transfuse those. The Queens are all stuck up here, right? And because there's no creep, those Queens can't get down to heal the Ultralisks. So the Queens can't heal these Ultralisks. Other problem is you got a couple Ultras here stuck behind the Queens. It's really not an ideal situation. But the goal here is first to kill the Nexus and then escape, ideally. Now, unfortunately, as we see, we're going to get back in the game here. We can see what happens when she tries to escape. She tries to run away. The Protoss Zealots are here to cut off all these Ultras. So instead, she's like, you know what? This isn't an ideal battle point. What I can do is I can really quickly spread the units out. And then look at this again. Look at how every single Ultralisk I mean, there's 3 right here, but those will quickly charge in and spread out into this zone. And then the rest of them all have their own pass forward, right? Each of those Ultralisks can basically charge forward, and every single one of those guys can come in there and get a good engagement going on. So jumping back in the game, even though it's not an ideal situation because, again, the Queens can't quite transfuse those Ultralisks, the fact of the matter was that she had no alternative. If she retreated, she would have had a lot of units cut off. And as long as you can transfuse some Ultras, as long as you get good fungal growth there, as long as you don't have too many Ultras stuck behind a battle, so you notice every Ultras there was engaging the entire time except for the one that was stuck behind the Queens, it's still a decent trade. Yes, it wasn't amazing, but look at this. Where there were 5 Immortals, now there are 1 Immortal, and that's just actually one that was just produced. All the Immortals were killed there. There's only a couple Colossi left, and then, of course, without the Immortals, the Protoss can't beat another Ultralisk rematch. But the Protoss has to, because he just lost his 4th base. He's afraid of the fact that there's a greater Spire somewhere that she could easily just go to Broodlords. The Protoss backed away waiting for Immortals. All of a sudden, these 11 Corruptors would just be 11 Broodlords, and then Protoss would have no chance. So he has to go and try to find engagement. As we can see here, it's pretty much already decided by the last battle, where all the Immortals were dead, and without Immortals, these Ultras are just going to clobber the whole army. It's no chance at all for Mr. Jim. So, the 2 things I really want to focus on this battle. I mean, the game's over here. With this army being dead, he's never going to... I mean, he just has to GG out, and I think he does in about 10 seconds or so. The 2 really important things. The reason why Scarlett was able to make it so hard for Jim to take a 4th base, which he was able to threaten those timing attacks, was because the creep was spread. So it's very important to spread creep. If you're using an Ultralisk-based composition, or actually anything Queen-based, which you should never do Ultralisk without Queens. So, in fact, you should just generally get Queens because they're awesome. But anytime you're using heavy Queen usage in Zerg versus Protoss, or Zerg versus Terran even, mostly versus Protoss, make sure you spread that creep. You have the extra Queens to help you spread it, and also Queens need creep to move around, chase after opponents, keep up with the rest of your army. Second thing, super important, don't force the engagements. If you move up a ramp and you see the Protoss waiting for you, just back away. You can always remain patient. Just remember to do things like what Scarlett was doing there, where of course she built that Greater Spire. So if the Protoss played Super Turtle, she just added in a few Broodlords and not have a problem. As soon as the Protoss moves out onto creep, that's when she goes for the engagement. As soon as he tries to take the 4th base and just creep all around the 4th base, that's when Scarlett can try to push out and knock out that 4th base and take the favorable engagements on creep, where the Ultras and Queens can really get in there and do their full damage. So wraps up our first segment. We'll take a short break and be right back with our second segment, another Scarlett vs. Jim replay.